I am 29 years old, my husband is 31. We have been married for 5 years. Overall, our relationship always seemed good, stable, and completely normal. We had shared plans, a routine family life, and from the outside it looked like everything was fine. But from the very beginning of our marriage, there was one constant problem that I tried to ignore for a long time. That problem was his best friend, Megan, who is 30 years old. She has been in his life since childhood. They grew up together, always stayed very close, and she was an extremely important person to him. I knew about her from the very beginning of our relationship and tried to be understanding and patient. However, their closeness always made me uncomfortable. She wasn't just a friend who called occasionally or stopped by once in a while. Megan was everywhere. She was constantly at our house, sometimes showing up without warning. They were texting nonstop, day and night. She knew all the details of our life. She traveled with us on family vacations and was present at almost every family gathering. Every time I tried to tell my husband that their friendship made me uncomfortable, his reaction was always the same. He brushed it off, dismissed my feelings, and told me I was imagining things. He said Megan was basically like a sister to him, that nothing had ever happened between them and never could, and that my anxiety was just jealousy. My mother-in-law, who is 58, always treated me very warmly. She was the one person who genuinely tried to support me. More than once, she told me that if I felt uncomfortable, I had every right to say so, and that boundaries were important in a marriage. She believed my feelings were completely valid. My father-in-law, who is 60, had a completely different attitude. He adored Megan. He constantly emphasized that she was part of the family, that she was almost like a daughter to him, and that I simply needed to accept it. He always dismissed my emotions, calling them baseless jealousy. According to him, the problem was not my husband's behavior or Megan's, it was me. About 2 months ago, my husband's behavior changed drastically. He started coming home late, often finding excuses to stay out longer. He began hiding his phone, turning the screen away, leaving the room when he was texting someone. He became cold and distant. I felt that something was very wrong. I had a strong sense of dread. I tried to calm myself down, telling myself it was just anxiety, but one night I couldn't take it anymore. While my husband was in the shower, I took his phone. I knew it was an invasion of privacy, but deep down I already knew the truth would be painful. That was when I found out everything. He and Megan had been having an affair for several months. Messages, meetings, plans, lies. It was all there, plain as day. I felt like the ground disappeared beneath my feet. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He confessed to everything. He cried, said it was a mistake, that he loved me, that it meant nothing, and begged me not to leave. I was so shattered that I didn't know what to do. I stayed silent for a while, trying to process the betrayal. A few weeks later, my in-laws hosted a large family barbecue. I was still in shock, but my husband convinced me to go. He said we needed to keep up appearances, while we supposedly tried to work things out. I agreed, even though I was completely broken inside, especially knowing that Megan would be there. She showed up as if nothing had happened. Smiling, friendly, acting toward me as if everything between us was normal. Inside I was boiling, but I held it together. That is, until during dinner my father-in-law publicly said that Megan would always be part of the family, and that I needed to stop obsessing over my own insecurities. He said this in front of everyone. That was the final straw. That was the final straw. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I stood up from the table, looked my father-in-law straight in the eyes and said, "You know what? Maybe I could have accepted it, if she hadn't been sleeping with my husband." A deathly silence fell over the table. It was so quiet it felt like no one was breathing. Megan's face turned white. She looked like she might collapse at any moment. My husband jumped up and started telling me to calm down, to stop, but it was too late. Something inside me had snapped. I told everyone the truth. I talked about the affair, the secret meetings, the messages, the lies, how long it had been going on, and how I found out. I didn't choose my words carefully anymore. I spoke plainly and honestly. My mother-in-law was silent for a few seconds, then she exploded, but not at me. She went after my husband and Megan. She shouted that they had betrayed me, destroyed our marriage, and shown me complete disrespect. She said she was ashamed of her own son. My father-in-law reacted very differently. He didn't even look shocked. Instead, he said I was overreacting, that affairs happen, and that I had no right to bring this up in front of the entire family. He openly defended Megan, saying she had simply made a mistake and that we should all just forget about it. In that moment, I knew I couldn't stay there any longer. I stood up and left the barbecue alone. I didn't wait for my husband. I didn't look back. I got into my car and drove away. That same evening, I packed my things and went to stay with my mom. Since then, my husband has not stopped begging me to come back. He constantly texts and calls, asking for another chance. My mother-in-law fully supports me, but my father-in-law has been telling the rest of the family that I'm the one creating drama and blowing things out of proportion. I started to doubt myself. Was I wrong to expose the truth in front of everyone? Should I have stayed quiet and kept it private? Update 1. I've read all the comments and want to add some important details. My mother-in-law and I are very close, and I started wondering whether I should show her the comments suggesting that my father-in-law might have cheated as well. Their marriage had been falling apart for years. She had wanted a divorce for a long time but stayed because he was the main breadwinner, and she was financially dependent on him. My husband and I don't have children. Another important detail: my future ex-husband cannot have children. After reading several comments about my father-in-law's strange attachment to Megan, I directly asked my mother-in-law whether there might be something suspicious there, and whether he had cheated on her before. It turned out they have been married for a very long time, and he cheated on her 10 times. One of those affairs was with Megan's mother. As far as my mother-in-law knows, he did not sleep with Megan herself. The rest of the affairs were with coworkers and one old friend from school. The next morning, I started looking for a lawyer. Mini update. My mother-in-law told my father-in-law that he had to take a DNA test to determine Megan's paternity, otherwise she would divorce him. He said he would try to schedule it the next day. My mother-in-law decided to file for divorce regardless. He just doesn't know yet. She made that decision very recently. I will help her with housing, and we plan to go into real estate together. I'm grateful I shared this story, because otherwise many things would have stayed hidden. My father-in-law also knew about my husband's affair with Megan. Realizing this makes me furious. He didn't even have the basic decency to tell me the truth. Message from my husband. He kept writing to me nonstop. He begged, played on my emotions, and manipulated me. He wrote that he overheard his mother talking about divorce and begged me not to do this. He promised to completely cut off all contact with Megan, begged me to come back, and said I had no right to abandon him during such a difficult time, especially if it turned out Megan might be his half-sister. He wrote that I would be a terrible person if I didn't come back. That I clearly didn't care about him. That he wanted a life with me, not with her. Message from Megan. Megan also messaged me. She was aggressive and cruel. She blamed me for exposing the affair to the entire family, and said it was my fault she now had to take a DNA test. She called me stupid, lazy, and a terrible wife. She said she now understood why he cheated on me and that she would treat him better than I ever did. I replied that even if he were her half-brother, she was still willing to be with him, and that it was disgusting. I told her I had never cheated on my husband and that I did everything for him, sacrificing myself, my friends, and my relationship with my own family. She continued sending insults. I took screenshots of everything. After all of these messages, I was emotionally exhausted. I barely slept, constantly replaying everything in my head, trying to understand how my life had turned into a complete nightmare so quickly. I was waiting for the DNA test results, even though I was terrified of them. Update 2. The DNA test results came back. My mother-in-law was the first to message me. It turned out that my husband and Megan are half-siblings. My father-in-law is Megan's biological father. I don't know what I felt in that moment. Part of me felt a strange sense of relief that the truth was finally out. Another part was horrified by the realization that my husband had cheated on me with his half-sister. It felt so dirty and disturbing that I physically felt sick. My father-in-law claimed he didn't know about his paternity. But my mother-in-law was convinced he had known from the beginning and had hidden this massive secret for years. His behavior, his obsessive defense of Megan, his complete disregard for my feelings, all of it now fit into one horrifying picture. My mother-in-law was devastated. She told me this was the final straw for her. She could no longer live with a man who had cheated on her for decades and hidden something so enormous. She filed for divorce. Update 3. My future ex-husband reacted very strangely to the results. At first, he said he felt disgusted by the entire situation. He messaged me saying he couldn't believe this had happened, that he was struggling to cope, and that he wanted to start a new life with me. At the same time, Megan claimed that despite everything, she and he had made a mutual decision to stay together and face whatever challenges came their way. She was devastated that they couldn't get married but wasn't willing to let him go. I was completely shocked by these contradictions. On one hand, he was telling me he wanted me back. On the other, Megan insisted they were together. Update 4. Not long after, another shocking detail emerged. I found out that my husband was not the only man in Megan's life. It turned out she was pregnant by another man. My future ex-husband immediately said he wanted nothing to do with Megan or her child. He said that this destroyed everything for him. This made the situation even more complicated. I struggled with whether I should tell that man's wife about the pregnancy. In the end, I decided she had the right to know. Update 5. I spoke to the wife of that man and told her everything. She gave her husband and Megan an ultimatum. She said Megan either had to agree to be a surrogate and give the baby to her and her husband after birth, or have an abortion. If Megan refused both options, she said she would most likely leave her husband. Later, this woman messaged me saying that Megan was seriously considering giving up the baby. Megan believed that if she did this, my husband might want to be with her again. My future ex-husband was completely opposed to having anything to do with the child or being with Megan. Update 6. My husband signed the divorce papers. My father-in-law also signed divorce papers with my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law said she felt free for the first time in many years. My ex-husband cut off all contact with Megan. At the same time, his father still occasionally communicates with her, which only reinforces my mother-in-law's suspicions. Final update. Some time has passed. The divorce is not yet fully finalized, but I know that he and Megan are no longer together. His mother told me that he no longer spends time with either his father or Megan. My mother-in-law has finally left my father-in-law. She spent many years living in the shadow of a toxic, controlling man who made her financially dependent and dismissed her pain. Now she is starting a new life. I am helping her with housing, and we are supporting each other. This was an incredibly painful, disgusting, and exhausting story. I lost my husband, my marriage, and an entire family I thought was mine. But at the same time, I also lost the illusion that kept me trapped in a toxic environment. Now the truth is known. Lies no longer have power over us. And although the road ahead is not easy, my mother-in-law and I can finally move forward, free from the people who spent years destroying our lives.